from here, Stimson had a drone commission led by General John Abizaid and Professor Rosa Brooks, and several former counsels to CIA, White House, State Department, export controllers, warfighters, technology experts, had some conclusions about the need for greater transparency with respect to drone lethal targeting operations, which have gone way up, frankly, under the current president compared to his predecessor. Many of which are done by the CIA as opposed to DoD. They both are active, and the recommendations were that there be more transparency and that in the main the operation should shift to DoD, which has very well established protocols for kinetic lethal operations, accountability, authority, and compensation, and essentially says what they did, and if they hit some collateral damage and killed some innocent people, they can talk about it. What's your view on that?
Yeah, so as chairman, I reviewed every airstrike that the U.S. government engaged in my time on the committee. And that was by my personal policy of making sure the reviews. So we did the review up front on the policy and the legality, and then I took an after-action report on every single one and read them personally as chairman. That was just my commitment to the program. So I have a little bit of a different view on it. So we get hung up a little bit on the method of the strike, drones, versus an F-16 with a 500-pound bomb. I'm not so sure why we have differentiated what the weapon system is, and we're going to change holistically our policy on how we target people in the battle space. That candidly made no sense to me. That my argument would be really then we shouldn't have special forces. We need to have a commission every time a special forces soldier goes out and discharges a weapon. I mean, it doesn't matter how this was my argument at the time. I'm not saying I won this argument. And so I look at it this way. There is a very small, highly trained group of individuals who have a really long set of checklists, if you will, protocols that they have to use. It has oversight. Me as chairman was one of them. The committee would do quarterly meetings where we would bring them all in for the quarterly meetings on any airstrike that would be used. And so what we saw happen is, think of the way the military functions. These people had been at this for 10 years, 8 years, 11 years. Right? They've been doing this work for 11 years. The military has this 2-year rotation plan. I just did not think, I thought we were going to risk a higher percentage of civilian casualties under the change. And you're asking somebody to change horses right midstream. Right? We're right in the fight. And the intelligence and use of a military strike would be different than trying to take terrorists, senior leadership terrorists, off the battlefield. The missions are different, I think.
Were the platforms that they used military platforms? Or were they organic to the agency?
Much of it was organic. As a matter of fact, much of what the military uses now was based on the development of weapon systems and ordnance. Well, and let me can I just one quick point on this, because the whole goal there was to say, because it was frustrating for me who was in the program seeing all these reports, oh my gosh, we blew up a wedding. Oh my gosh, they killed 50 children and women dancing at a party. I saw every single video of every one of them. And I can tell you right now, sitting here, that was an absolute propaganda lie. It never happened. Why? Because of the training, the protocols, how these weapon systems were used. And when they switched over, we started having problems. We ended up killing more civilians when the Department of Defense was engaged. I'm not saying they can't and shouldn't be. I'm just telling you the protocols, the experience. We had a trade-off here to have a press release. If the goal was to disrupt people, and I argue the airstrike campaign was the most disruptive event to Al-Qaeda ever, including troops on the ground. It was lethal because there was a tempo, right? You did not ever want to be promoted to the number 3 spot in Al-Qaeda, right? You lasted about 3 weeks, right? That's the operational guy. Guess what? You get 3 good weeks. Congratulations. Now, here's your pension, paid for by all of us. And I joke a little bit, but it was that serious for us. And that tempo didn't allow them to get financing in order. It didn't allow them to get operations planned. They spent most of their time running away. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Run forever. But we don't want you in America flying into buildings, right? We weren't going to allow that. And I argue that this change, And by the way, if you read what they've done, it's really to me, epitomizes bureaucracy for a solution, right? So we can have a great press conference and say, I'm transparent and I would never give it. They do these transfers. I don't know how much I can get in, so I'll be careful here because I look really bad in those orange jumpsuits with the numbers on the back. But they do this the first part is done by our civilian intelligence agencies, and somebody has to walk across the hall with a piece of paper or whatever, or a radio call and say, okay, now you have it. And then when they're done, they got to call back and send the piece of paper back to send it. For what? What? Does that make us safer? I argue it does not make us safer. It's kind of dumb. And we risk having a higher count of civilian casualties, which, if you recall, the mistake that was made was by the DOD, wasn't by the agency. And listen, I'm a big believer in DOD Special Forces, love all those people, they're great. I just think time on target is really important.
Okay, well, we really appreciate that answer. We know that we're human in this town, and we're all on the same team. I commend to people to read the Stimson Commission report.
Yeah. I disagree a little bit.
It's not about the operational so much as the accountability piece.
I think that's
and,
fair.
and telling the world what we're doing and not being ashamed to say
and
what we
that's
stand
very
for.
fair.